everybody to the Happy Healthy Women podcast and HHWTV. I am Natalie Colalilo, your host, and I am so excited to have an incredible guest with me today, sharing with us on this podcast episode. And if you're watching this HHWTV episode, the amazing Angie Ross. So I have to tell you, the minute that I met Angie, Angie is, before I go into like my love for you, Angie, I'm going to share, Angie is a money coach. She is a trailblazer in Happy Healthy Women. And so what that means is that she steps into her leadership. She shares her knowledge and expertise with our community. She educates us on money, which is huge. But if I'm going to get like legit with her actual intro, Angie Ross is a certified cash flow specialist and money coach who has been spreading her expertise passionately as a financial educator for the past 18 years. Can you believe we have done anything for 18 years? No, I don't. I know, it's crazy. She prides herself on providing unbiased, straightforward, and this is what I love about Angie, financial mentorship, allowing her clients to achieve their financial dreams without painful budgeting. That word gets to me. And I'm sure we can have a whole other conversation on the psychology of the word budgeting. But Angie, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you so much. And yeah, I could go on and on and on about budgeting, but I just want to say first, I just love your community that you have built. And so I'm super proud to be a trailblazer and all the things that you do for us other female entrepreneurs. We just lift each other up. So I really love it.
Well, you're such a huge part of that. I have to say, like having someone like you come into this community and be so positive, so uplifting, so free, with your knowledge and sharing and giving and generous, you're amazing. So thank you. I love you as much as you love Happy Healthy Women. So it's a good match. It's a good match.
Definitely.
Okay, so we're going to talk today about, cash flow, the cash flow plan, the one that you use to overhaul your life, which I think is so incredible. And I've had snippets here and there of it. I've learned from you in terms of business cash flow, in terms of personal cash flow. So there's so much. But today we're going to talk about this plan specifically that allowed you to overhaul your life. But before we get into that plan, talk to me a little bit about your transition, because you were a teacher. You were teaching personal finance, yes, and you moved into this. Why? How? Tell me the story that goes along with this.
I know. Why would I do that? No, I'm just joking. Yeah, I was teaching personal finance to grade 12s. And honestly, all the parents were asking for help. And so they would come to me and say, oh, could I be in your class? And I'm like, unfortunately, not allowed. And so what ended up happening was I recognized the need out there for unbiased financial education and mentorship, because quite honestly, there's not a lot of people that you can talk to about your money that aren't trying to sell you something or aren't earning a commission on what they are giving you advice about. Mm-hmm. So the banks are a great example. You go to your banker and maybe they give you some advice, but quite honestly, they're usually making some money on the back end. Doesn't mean we shouldn't like the banks. I use them as well. We need them, but we do need to know kind of how that works in the back end as well. And so essentially I ended up deciding at some point I wanted a little change in my life. I had done teaching for, I think it was 17 years, and I needed a shift personally. And I recognized this area that really was being unfilled and unmet. It was a gap out there, and I decided to go for it. And so here I am, money coach, and I help people in the one-on-one basis. And I'm also doing some corporate financial wellness. And so getting it out there to the employees. And what I find that's a bit different is that the students couldn't really implement some of the things that I was saying in the moment because they're 17, they're 18, they don't have money per se. Maybe they have a part-time job. But then what I noticed is when I was able to actually deal with adults, or, us that think that we're adults, realistically, when we were working through their money together, we would see immediate results. And it was very, very gratifying for me, because they'd come back and say, this is what happened because of the advice. And so I really like that, how it's kind of immediate gratification as well for me and my end.
Absolutely. And oh my gosh, there's so much there, right? And so when you talk about the banks and the institutions, right, there's so much trust. We put so much trust in them, forgetting but they are a business, right? And they do help us, right? They do help us do certain things like buy homes if we don't have the cash to put down on it. But it's really interesting how you so straightforwardly show people what is happening in their world, right, and in their life. So you've been able to do so many things with your cash flow plan, right? Purchasing a vacation home, I know, is one of them. Like having different pockets or buckets, I should say, of money for certain things that don't have you going into extra debt. Like, talk to me about let's talk about the benefits from this cash flow plan that have happened to you personally.
Yeah. So honestly, I would not have been able to leave teaching if I had not have implemented the cash flow plan myself.
Yeah.
And so I'm actually calling it now kind of the anti-budget, which I'll get into a little bit later. But essentially by following that plan, I was able to recognize in our household, I have a husband. And so in our household specifically, we were spending $2,000 a month on stuff that we just simply didn't care about. So when we went through, when people work with me individually, we do an analysis on your numbers for you. And so we went through 4 months worth of our spending and our income and looked at it. It was like, what are we spending this $2,000?
Yeah.
We weren't getting anything from it.
Right.
Yeah. So I was able to take that money, and instead of having to work full time as a teacher, I was actually able to transition to part time while I started my business. And then this past year, I went off full time as a money coach because I quite simply didn't need the income from teaching anymore. And so I was able to dive in full time as a money coach.
I'm going to stop you there. $2,000 a month. $2,000 a month. So that's a big chunk of change, right? That's $24,000 a year.
Yeah.
That, right? And no, I'm not shaming you at all.
Okay. It's okay.
It's not a shame thing. It's like, wow, that's a huge chunk of change to realize. And I'm sure you're absolutely not alone in that. Where was that money going, if you don't mind me asking? To what kinds of things?
I mean, illegal items. No, I'm just joking. So realistically, a lot of times what's happening in our house, it's no different than anyone else. I'm not special. It's going to be food, retail, entertainment. Right. And it's the little things that just it's like death by 1,000 paper cuts. So it's just a $50 item here, a $50 item there. And when you have 2 adults living in a house and they're both doing that, and then we have 2 children, you're like, oh, okay, where did that money go? And quite honestly, when I look at other people's analysis, I am by no means the worst offender, and I'm by no means the best either in terms of our analysis. There was definitely, we're kind of middle ground, middle income. Most people in our income scenario, we're seeing very similar results when we do the analysis.
Yeah. These are little tiny things, little tiny purchases. Like, I can tell you so many times how I've come home, like I'm at the office all day, or I've had an exhausting week, right? Friday nights are a big culprit for this. Coming home and saying, I am not cooking tonight. I have had the longest week. Let's order Uber Eats, right? Or let's just get a pizza, or forget it, right? So just even that alone, right? If you do that once a week, or you do that a couple times a month, that adds up, right? And so I can see where you're saying this money came from.
Yeah. And I think too, like, I don't want people to think that, oh, if I work with a money coach, they're going to tell me I can't have pizza on a Friday night. No, yeah. Please have your pizza. Just, you want to put your money towards what you value. And so we still, like, we're going to eat out tonight. I'm not going to lie to you. My daughter's away. I'm not cooking. It's not happening. We're going to eat out tonight, but we have a set amount of money that we spend every week on those kind of unconscious items. And so long as our expenditures fall into that amount, that dollar amount, then we can afford it. And so then it's guilt-free as well, because we know we're not basically putting all of our financial goals on the back burner to have pizza on a Friday night. We've already dealt with the financial goals. We're going to meet those financial goals. And now this money that we're spending is guilt-free. And so I actually feel like I have more money than I had before I followed the plan, just because when I do spend it, I know I have it and it's not impacting anything else in a negative fashion.
Oh, I love that so much. And that right there that you talk about, that feeling of, I know that this is not like that, this spending is not negatively impacting our situation, is like priceless. Like it's invaluable. So we have to, this is so, so important. So, okay, let's talk about this plan. What is this plan, this cash flow plan that you are talking about that doesn't have budgeting included in it? I'm so curious.
Yeah. And so again, I'm going to call it an anti-budget just because it kind of rolls off the tongue. And so it's not a free for all. I've had people say an anti-budget. Okay, so I just do whatever I want with my money. No, you are going to have some limitations in place. But really what happens is essentially we're paying you first out of your income. So we would evaluate all the things you care about. So in my house, it's vacation, it's physical activity. So my husband loves skiing. I love golf. My daughter plays hockey. She also likes golf. And so we put our money towards the things that we actually care about. And so right at the beginning of the month or when we get paid, we set aside money into these life jacket funds, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But essentially, life jacket funds, we set it aside for those items in advance of spending on other items. And so when we're doing our cash flow plan, we basically take your income, we subtract all of your fixed expenses. So that would be like your housing, your car, the stuff you can't really change. We subtract out also the things that you value. We call them your non-negotiables. Basically meaning I'm not negotiating golf. Like I'm an addict, so it's happening.
Right.
So essentially I'm going to build it into my plan. So I plan for a certain amount per month. And then whatever's left, that pile that's left over, you can spend however you want. And so we essentially take the pile that's left over on a monthly basis, divide it into 4 for per week. And then at my house, it's $700 a week. And we can spend that $700 on anything we want in the category of food, retail, entertainment. We don't have to track anything except for that $700. So it reduces all the restriction. It reduces the tracking. It's way less tedious. You've probably heard me say this before, but only 21% of people can actually follow a budget successfully. 79% of people cannot. So for those that can, keep on keeping on. For the other 79%, I like to say, don't hate the player, hate the game, and the game of budgets is broken.
For sure. Well, let's talk a little bit about that. What are the biggest, because I love this, and like what you're talking about is basically like when I hear you talk, I'm like, okay, so I can have everything I want. Like literally, right? With the money that's coming in, as long as I understand where it's actually going, right? And so what is the biggest issue with budgets? Obviously, like that's one of them, right? It's restrictive. You can't have everything you want. Tell me more.
They're reactive. And so
Yeah.
typically how people use budgets is they set up their little spreadsheet at the beginning of the month. The numbers all look awesome. We're raring to go. Everything is good. We get to the end of the month. We go and check and see what happened. Oh, wait, I overspent in this category, in this category, in this category, because I probably didn't track every single thing I purchased throughout the month, especially if you have a household with more than one person in it. Right. So I know when I was younger and I was on my own, it was way easier to manage my money. Now there's all the things going on. Right. So it's just not really very realistic that people are going to sit down and track everything and go into their spreadsheet and say, oh, today I spent $55 in groceries and I have $600 allotted, 600 minus 55. Okay, what do I have left? They're just not going to do that. And so the reactive nature of it really throws people off. They have good intentions, right? I think people really have good intentions when they're building a budget. But what ends up happening is just at the end, they've gone over. The other thing that I find that's really negative about budgets is people don't typically put in the irregular expenses. So these are kind of those big items that come up maybe once a year, maybe once every few years. They don't factor those in. So good example, Christmas. We're right in Christmas season right now, and people have not budgeted. They have not set aside an amount of money, and they have not put anything into their budget for all the other months. So December comes up and they're like, wait a second, Christmas is here. I have to fit this into my December budget. Oh man. And if you're like the rest of the general population, adults on average in Canada spend $1,350 each on Christmas. So if you're not going to just take that in December and just like absorb it, not for most people. That's going to be too much money to just absorb into your budget if you've been budgeting.
Talk to me about credit cards. What are your thoughts?
I actually don't mind credit cards for the perks that they provide. And so with my clients, we typically do use credit cards for those fixed expenses. So housing expenses, gas for your car, those items that we're not unconsciously spending on. Like, for example, if I'm having a bad day, I don't go and fill my car up with gas for retail therapy.
Right.
That's not a thing. And so realistically, we can still use credit for those types of items because you're not unconsciously spending because of some kind of emotional component. The only thing I will say is it has been proven to reduce your spending by 25% if you use cash. And so when I work with clients, I do suggest they try and use cash for those big 3 items. Once again, we're talking food, retail, and entertainment. Those are the ones that really throw people over the edge. So if you can use cash for those, that tends to really help reduce that unconscious spending for those categories. But otherwise, credit cards have a purpose. I use them. I get points on them. I just try and manage my use of them to those items that I'm not unconsciously like waving my card around and filling my cart up, right? So there's a use for them for sure.
Right, right. And so I guess what you're saying is when you're using them consciously for those items like gas that you know you're going to be spending money on, then you have like once that bill rolls around, you have the money set aside to actually pay that credit card off, right? Because in my mind, I'm like, yeah, use your credit card totally fine, but pay that bill. Like, why are you incurring extra interest fees, right?
100%. And I think too, what happens is people will use their card and they'll think, oh, I haven't spent more than $1,000. And then the bill comes in and it's like 1,500. And they're like, oh my goodness, where am I going to get the extra $500 to pay it off? Because it adds up so quickly and we're not paying attention, that's going to be what happens to people. And now they have a balance on their credit card and now they're paying interest on their credit card. And that's when you really start to get into trouble. So that's what I would try and avoid if at all possible.
Right, right. Yeah, of course. So your plan then is about looking at all sides of a financial situation. Yes. How much do people have to tell you? Because I feel like sometimes that is the deciding factor. Do I work with a coach or do I just like look up some tips on how to be better with money? Like, what is it in that sense?
I mean, honestly, people can do it themselves if they want to, like really, hanker down and get it done. At this point, if you're my age and you're still struggling with money or you're struggling to set up a plan and you want that unbiased advice, it's probably not going to happen by looking up some tips on Google. Unfortunately, I'm not trying to break the bad news, but it's just the way it is. But in reality, it does feel like getting financially naked.
Yeah.
So I'm not going to lie. We typically look at 4 months worth of income and expenses. The beautiful thing about working with me is I did this myself. And so my husband and I went through the process. There is no shame. I'm very open about the fact that we found $2,000 a month that we were spending on crap we didn't care about. So I am definitely not bringing any kind of judgment to the table. People sometimes judge me. The other day I said I spend $2,400 on Christmas a year and I save monthly for that. And someone messaged me about that's ridiculous. And I was like, well, thank you for your comment. I'm a Christmas addict.
Yeah.
I'm owning it. I actually think it's ridiculous when people don't know what they're spending. They won't look at it with an honest eye. For me, it's not about reducing what I'm spending at Christmas. I'm not going to. And so I will just make sure that it's not having a negative financial impact by planning for it and building that life jacket fund. And so honestly, I can see how people might be intimidated, but because I've been through it and I know exactly how it feels, I think it gives a little bit of a different feel to working with me.
Yeah, absolutely. And oh my gosh, that's so interesting because like you get to spend on whatever you want. You are in control of your money, right? And I think this is the point, and this is where we should all be, is at this place of feeling empowered with our money. There is nothing worse, and I've been there too. But like with feeling, I'm just lost. Like I don't know the next step to take. I'm drowning, right? And you've heard my story about being $60,000 in debt after my, first beautiful, spectacular, first and only, hopefully, spectacular failure of my retail boutique, right? And literally like having to bring a box of muffins to the bank and say, please help me, right? And I just, if I had had you at that time to, help me make all the smart financial decisions, both in my business and in my personal life, things would have been so much different, right? So, I think one of the things that we have to remember is that we're not born knowing these things. And we need to learn from someone who does know, who has done the work and has learned. So yeah, and I know that you also do a lot of work with people in terms of their business finances too, correct, Angie? Like it's not just in the personal side, and if it's an entrepreneur that's coming to you, which you'll meet lots of in Happy Healthy Women, obviously, you'll get both sides, right? And they'll want help on both ends, correct?
Yeah. So typically we start with the personal finances because, and there's a good reason for this, is because usually when someone's business finances are kind of chaotic and their cash flow is chaotic, it's translating into their personal as well. And the other thing that we want to do is we want to kind of know what are the expenses here that we need to cover with our business? How much income do I need to pull in with my business? And that's going to inform a lot of the decisions for your business finances as well. And so by starting with the personal and kind of taking a look at the expenses and sorting through that, then we can translate that to the business side. But yeah, there's a really great book called Profit First. And honestly, this guy owes me money for the amount of times I talk about it. But it's by Mike Michalowicz, and it's a great book, a really nice, easy system for entrepreneurs to set up. I actually had someone the other day say, well, I'm just getting started. That is the perfect time to set this up. It's like a $20 book. So go grab yourself the $20 book, expense it. It's, learning material for your new business, and get your business bank account set up. Because one of the main things I see happening with entrepreneurs is, first of all, they don't pay themselves enough, which is eradicated in this book. And they also oftentimes don't set aside enough for taxes. And then when the tax man comes, they are trying to find some cash to pay for that. And that gets them into this whole cycle of always being behind the ball and owing the government money, which is not a lot of fun.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So there's two sides to that coin. I just want to jump back to the piece about, we could do this ourselves and not have someone like you walk us through this. And I was actually thinking about this the other day, because literally, like, for the third time in 2 months, we had to call a plumber again at home. There was a pipe leaking, and anyway, whatever. We did it. We found someone. And it's so interesting what happens after that, because I could be, the next day telling someone, oh, I had to call a plumber. Oh, what was the problem? Oh, it was this. And they'll say, oh, that part's like, $20 at Home Depot. You should have just went to get it yourself and did it. And, here I am sitting there thinking, oh man, that part was $20 and I paid a plumber $300 to do it. But you know what I was thinking also? Right. But I don't have the tools. Yeah. I don't have the know-how. I don't know how these parts work. I don't know if I'm going to break something else in my house by fixing this one pipe. I don't know, right? I'm going to have to look it up. I don't have the time. I have to look it up on YouTube. I'm going to have to do all these things. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, that $300 became so worth it, right? When I thought about all the things. So I just want to say, right? When we are looking at taking the DIY approach to certain things, especially things like plumbing in our house, which is very important, and things like our money, which is also very important, we sometimes shouldn't be thinking about doing the DIY approach.
Yeah, listen, I 100% agree with you. I think I'm going to expedite the process that you're going through. If you are trying to overhaul your money and you have that unbiased third person that it's going to take a look, say, hey, wait a second, take a look at this. What are you doing over here, right? That's going to be super helpful. And I also think that you need to think about your return on investment, which is really what you're talking about. For your $300, you got back your time, you got peace of mind knowing that this was fixed, you got all these things. It's the same with my clients. We actually I have a money back guarantee when I'm working with someone, that I've never, ever had to give anyone their money back, because typically it states, if you follow the process and you don't see any kind of results, we will give you your money back. No, if you follow the process, you are going to see results. We will give you your money back, but it's not going to happen if you follow the process. And so realistically, it's well worth the money. The other thing is, it lights a fire under your, I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say that on here, but it lights a fire under your ass. And so that accountability and that support piece, it could take you years to get your money in line. And with me, I'm working with you for 6 months. And now you have gained how much time back? And that translates to money, right? Yeah. You maybe have debt that's been eradicated. You're not paying interest on that now. You've got your life jacket funds built up. And so you're not having to borrow money to pay for your roof or whatever that is. And so honestly, it pays for itself time and time again. But I do know, and I've heard this before, I don't want to pay money to get help with my money. And I'm like, well, it's one of the most important things, if not the most important thing in your life. It's probably the thing you do need to pay money to get help with.
Yeah, for sure. And so, no hesitations with working with Angie. And I mean, if you're not already thinking, maybe I should reach out to Angie. Angie, can you talk to us about, because I mean, you're living life, you live a good life, and you travel and you own property, and there's things that you do. You have a family, you are raising a wonderful family, you do lots of great things with your family. So talk to us about the big picture results that this has given you. You've touched on it already, but just share with us what your life looks like, because I really want people to understand that, especially women entrepreneurs that feel as though, oh my gosh, I've got to go, my business is doing okay, but maybe I should go get a full-time job because I'm scared that there's more a month at the end of the money.
That's a great, I love that saying, by the way. There's more month at the end of the money. Yeah, that happens to a lot of people. And realistically, my life is amazing. So I will just talk about the fact that by actually thinking about what you value and putting your money towards that, you're just going to find that you appreciate the things that you're buying so much more. It's going to bring you a lot more gratitude as well. Honestly, we were able to buy an Airbnb in Mont Tremblant because we took control of our cash flow, and we're middle income. Like, I'm not rich over here. So I'm living, the middle income kind of scenario like most people. And just by taking control of our cash flow, we were able to do that. And what that has done for us is it actually pays for itself now. So we typically go somewhere in the range of four to 6 times a year, depending on the year, and our accommodation's paid for. It's 5 bedroom. It has a private hot tub. It's on a golf course. Like, it's beautiful. And we bring friends and family with us. So we're getting more quality time with our friends and family as well. The other thing is, because I've transitioned into business, I have more time with my daughter. She's 12, and very much so into Sephora. So we have a lot of conversations about money and the value of money. But yeah, I get a lot more time with her and more time with my family to do the things that we really care about, because I'm not burnt out really from the school experience. And so I will say that it has made a massive transformation in my life.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the end of the day, these are the things that matter, the way that we're spending our time. And although we're talking about money today as our asset and, something that we really need to get a control over, which is true, time is our biggest. And we cannot spend our biggest asset of time in a wise way if we are constantly struggling and worrying about where our money is going and what it's doing.
Totally agree. Like, money is the biggest source of stress for people.
Yeah.
And so we have to take care of that if we want to live kind of that fulfilled, grateful life.
Absolutely. And that is what we are all about here at Happy Healthy Women: happiness, health, success, living a fulfilled life while we run successful businesses. It is possible. You can have it all. So if this doesn't share that with you, then I don't know what will. But I love this. I love this conversation. Okay. So, Angie, we're going to wrap up soon, but I just want to hear from you what is the best way that you work with people? How do people learn more about you and actually start getting ahead on their money goals?
So really, I'm all over Instagram, much to my daughter's chagrin. I don't know if I can use that word. People might not even know what that means, but she's like, although she supports my post, she's super cute. But I'm all over Instagram, Angie Ross, Money Coach. You can check me out there, but I work with people mostly in a one-on-one capacity for a 6-month program, because money is not that easy to change your habits necessarily. And so we need some time to change those. And so I do that in a 6-month capacity. I do offer free discovery calls for people to have a chat about money. Last week, I just talked with someone who used to be a former student of mine, and they wanted to ask me a question about their tax-free savings account. We sat down for 30 minutes. We hashed it out. And so it's not just if you necessarily want to talk to me about my program, although I'm happy to talk about that, but anything money, I'm happy to talk about. I've also been developing a new group program for next year, which is new. So I'm super excited about that. So that's for women only. And we're going to be working through kind of my system, but in a group capacity, so that we have a community. So I had that feedback quite a few times from people that they wanted a community of people kind of going through the same thing with money, and they wanted to learn together. And so I'm creating that as well. And then finally, I do corporate financial wellness as well. So I do workshops and lunch and learns and all of those types of things. So I have a couple of things, but it's usually the one-on-one coaching or the group programs that individuals are seeking me out for.
Amazing. And people can book a free call with you. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, and they can go to your website or Instagram to do that?
They can go to Instagram. It's right in the top in my link. It says book a call, and we can chat about all things money. I'm very passionate about money. So you're going to get, the no BS, uncensored version of how I feel about money. But again, I just love it. And I love to pass along information so that people can make educated decisions with their money and really maximize it to have the most fun they can with it too.
Yeah, live your best life.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Angie, I love you so much. I think you're fantastic. I appreciate you and all that you bring to Happy Healthy Women as a trailblazer and a money coach. Thank you so much for being here today on this podcast.
Well, it's been my pleasure, and this is my first official podcast, and you made it painless and fun. So thank you, Natalie.
My pleasure. Thank you for being here. Take care, everybody. See ya.